Saad Owusu, 27, stood nervously in her graduation gown, her heart pounding as she scanned the crowd at the University Hall in Accra, Ghana. This day was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, a celebration of years of hard work, late nights, and sacrifices she had made to reach this moment. She looked around, searching for the familiar face of her husband, Tund Balogun, hoping to see him smiling, cheering her on. But he wasn't there. Her phone vibrated in her hand, and she quickly checked the message. Her stomach dropped. "I'm sorry. My ex really needs me today. I'll explain later." The words felt like a punch. On the one day she needed him the most, the one day that was hers, he chose someone else. She stared at the screen, unable to believe it. All those nights she had supported him, stood by him, believed in their love. It seemed to mean nothing at that moment. When her name was finally called, Saad felt her legs shake. She walked up to the stage alone, keeping her face calm, hiding the tears threatening to fall. The applause around her blurred into a dull hum. But inside, something shifted. A quiet strength began to grow. She realized that while he had made his choice, she could make hers. This moment, painful as it was, would be burned into her memory forever, not as a day of heartbreak alone, but as the moment she decided she mattered too. Saad had always believed in her marriage, even when it wasn't easy. She remembered the nights she stayed up worrying about Tund, the days she lent him money when he had nothing, and the countless times she encouraged him when everyone else had given up. She wanted to see him succeed, to see them both build a life filled with love and dreams. Their tiny apartment in Accra wasn't much, but it was theirs, and in those four walls, she imagined a bright future together, one filled with laughter, hope, and stability. She had loved him with everything she had, trusting that the love she gave would be returned. But slowly, little things began to plant doubt in her mind. The late nights at work that didn't make sense, the sudden mood changes, and the constant messages that made her stomach twist. And then there was the name that appeared more often than she liked, Zainab. She told herself it was nothing, that she was overthinking, that love required patience. Looking back now, Saad could see the patterns clearly. She had given her heart fully, often ignoring the signs that he was slowly drifting away. She had sacrificed so much for someone who couldn't meet her halfway, and for a love that seemed more like a memory of what could have been than the reality of what was. Every small compromise, every sleepless night, every whispered reassurance, it had all been for him. And yet, as painful as it was to admit, she realized she had been believing in a love that wasn't truly hers, a love that she had fought for alone. Zainab was never really gone. Even when Saad thought the past was behind them, Zainab had a way of sneaking back into Tund's life. There were calls in the middle of the night, messages that seemed urgent but left Saad uneasy, and little excuses that slowly pulled him closer. At first, Saad brushed it off. She trusted her husband. She believed their love was stronger than any shadow from his past. But those late-night calls, the sudden disappearances, the distant looks, they were cracks she had ignored. Every time she mentioned Zainab, Tund would smile and reassure her, promising it was nothing, that she had nothing to worry about. Saad wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him. Love had taught her to trust, to give the benefit of the doubt. Then came graduation day, the moment she had been dreaming of for years. And just like that, everything changed. Tund wasn't there. Instead, there was a message, "I'm sorry, my ex really needs me today. I'll explain later." Those words hit her harder than anything before. This wasn't a missed event. This wasn't bad timing. This was a choice. For the first time, Saad saw the truth clearly. All the signs she had ignored, all the doubts she had pushed aside, they weren't accidents. Zainab wasn't just a memory, she was a presence. And Tund had let her back in. That moment shattered the trust she had built over years. It was painful, yes, but it was also awakening. She realized that love wasn't supposed to feel like being second choice, and loyalty wasn't supposed to be optional. That day marked the end of pretending everything was fine. It wasn't just absence, it was the moment Saad finally understood what she deserved. When Tund finally returned home that evening, he tried to explain. He spoke quickly, almost desperately, telling Saad how he hadn't meant to hurt her, how it had been complicated, how Zainab had needed him. But his words sounded hollow, like echoes bouncing off the walls of their apartment. Saad looked at him, really looked at him, and felt something inside her break. She didn't scream. She didn't shout or demand answers. She didn't cry in front of him, at least not yet. She just went quiet. The silence between them was heavy, filled with the weight of disappointment, betrayal, and unspoken truths. Her hands shook slightly as she held her coffee cup, pretending to sip, but inside, her heart was racing. Every word he spoke only made the pain sharper. Saad realized that no explanation could erase the choice he had made that day. She had spent years putting him first, supporting him, believing in him, loving him unconditionally. And now, at the moment that mattered most to her, he had chosen someone else. For the first time, Saad saw the truth clearly. She wasn't just hurt, she was no longer his priority. That realization cut deeper than any argument, any fight, any moment of anger ever could. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was final. Something inside her shifted. In that quiet, in that stillness, Saad understood something important. The pain she felt wasn't just about him leaving her on graduation day. It was about knowing that she had been giving her heart to someone who couldn't or wouldn't hold it with the same care. And for the first time, she let herself feel the weight of that truth, fully, painfully, but clearly. Days passed, and Saad felt the quiet shift inside her. The sadness, the shock, and the hurt were still there, but beneath it, something new was growing, a clarity she hadn't felt before. She began to see everything in sharp focus. All those years she had poured herself into Tund, all the sacrifices she had made, all the time she had bent her own needs for his comfort, it had meant nothing to him. He hadn't respected her, hadn't chosen her when it mattered, and hadn't truly seen her worth. The realization stung, but instead of breaking down, Saad felt a strange sense of power. She remembered who she was before him, ambitious, determined, full of dreams. And she understood that she didn't need someone else to validate her. She didn't need someone who would choose another over her. That's when she made her decision. She would stop chasing a love that didn't value her. She would stop waiting for apologies, for explanations, for empty promises. She would turn her energy inward. She would build herself, piece by piece, brick by brick. Saad started thinking about the life she wanted, her career, her freedom, her happiness, and realized it was all within her reach. She didn't need Tund's approval, his presence, or his love to live fully. The heartbreak that once threatened to crush her now felt like a spark, pushing her toward something better, something stronger. For the first time since that devastating graduation day, Saad felt the tiniest flicker of hope. And with it, a quiet determination. She would rise, not because of him, but in spite of him. She was done giving her heart to someone who couldn't hold it, and it was time to start holding it for herself. One morning, Saad woke up with a calm she hadn't felt in weeks. The apartment was quiet, the sunlight streaming through the windows, and for the first time, she felt in control. She didn't shout. She didn't argue. She didn't beg. She simply began packing her things. Slowly, carefully, she folded her clothes, tucked away her books, and stacked the memories she wanted to take with her. On the kitchen counter, she left a small note. The words were simple, but they carried everything she needed to say. You chose what mattered to you. Now I'm choosing me. No explanations, no accusations, just truth. She knew she didn't owe him a scene, a fight, or even tears. This was her life, and she was reclaiming it quietly, firmly, without looking back. By mid-morning, Saad was on her way to the airport. Her heart raced, but it wasn't fear, it was freedom. Lagos, Nigeria, awaited her, a city full of possibilities, challenges, and a life that was hers alone to shape. She didn't know exactly what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain: she would no longer live in the shadow of someone else's choices. As the plane lifted off, Saad looked out the window at the shrinking skyline of Accra and felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. She was leaving behind a chapter filled with disappointment, heartbreak, and lessons learned the hard way. Ahead of her was a blank page, a fresh start, and the promise of discovering the woman she had always been meant to be. For the first time in a long time, Saad smiled. She was walking away quietly, but her heart was loud. Loud with courage, determination, and the knowledge that she was finally choosing herself. In Lagos, Saad threw herself into her new life. With her degree finally in hand, she landed a strong position at a growing firm, a job that challenged her and pushed her to be better every single day. The work wasn't easy, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of purpose that had nothing to do with anyone else. Every project she completed, every goal she hit, reminded her that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. She worked hard, not just to succeed, but to heal. The nights were quiet, and sometimes the memories of that graduation day would creep in, the empty seat where Tun should have been, the sting of his absence, but instead of letting it break her, she let it fuel her. That pain became a quiet fire inside her, a reminder that she deserved better and that she had the strength to rise above it. Slowly, Saad began to rediscover herself. She laughed more freely, made new friends, and learned to enjoy her own company. Confidence returned in small moments, the way she walked into a meeting, the way she spoke up for her ideas, the way she no longer hesitated to put herself first. Each day was a step forward, a small victory over the heartbreak she had endured. And though the memory of that lonely graduation day never fully faded, it became something different now. It was no longer a mark of betrayal, it was a symbol of survival, of strength, and of growth. Saad realized that life hadn't stopped for her, she had simply been waiting for the courage to start again. And now, she had. Back in Accra, Tund sat in his apartment, staring at the walls as if they could answer the questions he didn't want to face. At first, he told himself it didn't matter. Zainab was around now, she needed him. But her presence didn't feel comforting or exciting, it felt messy, complicated, and exhausting. Every call, every message, every sudden demand reminded him that he hadn't actually gained anything. Instead of the life he thought he wanted, chaos had followed him in. And then there was the quiet, the absence of Saad. The apartment felt emptier than ever, but not in the way a missing person might make it. This was different. Her laughter, her energy, the way she made even ordinary moments feel alive, those things were gone, and no one else could fill that space. He realized, slowly and painfully, that he had taken for granted someone who had truly loved him. For the first time, Tund saw clearly what he had lost. Saad wasn't just a girlfriend, a wife, or a partner. She was someone real, someone loyal, someone who had stood by him when no one else would. And now, she was gone. He tried to reach out, to make excuses, to explain, but he knew deep down that it wouldn't matter. The trust, the love, the bond he had broken couldn't be easily repaired. Sada's absence wasn't just a silence, it was a lesson he couldn't ignore. And for the first time, Tund understood the weight of his choices. The woman he had left behind wasn't just someone he had loved, she was someone who had given him everything. And by choosing another, he had lost something he could never get back. Months had passed since Saad left Accra, and life had moved on, especially for her. At a professional event in Lagos, Tund walked in, expecting the familiar warmth, the same Saad who had waited, who had loved him unconditionally. But the moment he spotted her, his breath caught. She wasn't the same woman he had known. Saad stood tall, her posture confident, her smile calm and radiant. Her eyes sparkled with a quiet strength, the kind that comes from hard work, healing, and discovering your own worth. The woman who had once waited for someone else to choose her was now glowing with independence, her success visible in the way she carried herself, the way she spoke, the way she laughed lightly with colleagues. Tund hesitated, his words ready but heavy with regret. He stepped closer, hoping to reach her, to explain, to make her understand. But Saad didn't look at him the way she used to. She didn't pause. She didn't wait. Her life had moved forward, and she was fully present in it. The chair where she once might have waited for him to catch up was empty, because she didn't need anyone else to define her worth anymore. For a brief moment, Tund realized what he had lost, not just her love, but the woman she had become because of him leaving. His past choices had shaped her, but not in the way he imagined. She wasn't broken, she was stronger, sharper, unstoppable. And the thought of her turning away, of her continuing without him, hit him harder than any argument or fight ever could. Sada's independence wasn't just visible, it was magnetic. And in that room, filled with strangers, she shone brighter than ever, reminding Tund that the woman he had once taken for granted no longer belonged to him. Tund took a deep breath and stepped forward, his voice shaking as he tried to apologize. He spoke quickly, stumbling over words, explaining mistakes he had made, the choices he regretted, the ways he wished he could take it all back. But Saad didn't interrupt. She didn't argue. She just listened, her face calm, her eyes steady. When he finally fell silent, she smiled, a small, quiet smile that carried more power than any shouting or tears ever could. "You made your choice that day," she said softly, her voice gentle but firm. "And I made mine after." She didn't wait for his forgiveness. She didn't ask for him to understand. She didn't even look back as she walked away. But the way she moved, confident, peaceful, free, spoke volumes. She wasn't broken. She wasn't angry. She was stronger than she had ever been, whole in a way that he could never take from her. The woman who once stood alone on graduation day had reclaimed herself. She had taken the heartbreak, the betrayal, and the silence, and turned it into strength. From that moment on, she would never be left behind again. And for the first time, Saad knew, her life, her happiness, her worth, was hers alone, untouchable, unstoppable.